Hey, you guys, can you believe we're already a quarter of the way through 2019? I cannot believe it. I am doing a free 3-day training called How to Stop Fighting with Your Strong-Willed Kiddo. It's actually going to be a challenge. In 3 days, you are going to learn so much. I'm going to give you tools and tips and content, and I'm going to really get into the main practical points of mastermind parenting so we can get you some quick wins so that you guys can have the best summer ever. We're almost at summertime. You know, those days are never ending when you have a strong-willed kid and they're constantly saying no and fighting with you about every little thing. So we need to get on the road for the most successful summer ever. Go to mastermindparenting.com/challenge. That's mastermindparenting.com/challenge to join me in this free 3-day challenge. Hope to see you guys there. You're listening to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast with Rambly Rubenstein, episode 59. My name is Rambly Rubenstein, and welcome to the Mastermind Parenting Podcast, where we believe when your thoughts grow, the conversations in your home flow. Hi, guys. Just got a wild hair. I'm making this episode. It's first thing in the morning. I'm not in my office where I have my fancy microphone, so hopefully the sound is going to be decent. I'm wearing my AirPods. I always call them ear pods, and my kids correct me. But I was just doing my morning things, and I was communicating with this group that just completed this little mini retreat that I did last weekend called the D.A.R.E experience, dissolve and release experience, where we dissolve triggers. So y'all know how I always talk about in my book, I wrote a book called The Parent Gap. And so it's the gap between the parent you want to be and the parent you currently are, especially when your kids are pushing your buttons or you're in the heat of the moment, or basically when the shit hits the fan, right? So you go and you listen to podcasts and you read books, and maybe you even are in the 1% that takes a parenting class or attends a parenting seminar, and then your kid's whining and whining and whining, or you've asked them to get in the bath 27 times or whatever, and you're just like, enough, and you lose it. That's when you're in the gap. And so all of those tactics that were used with us growing up, they come back online, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of reasons why. So the beginning of what I teach is always like, let's learn this new parenting language. Let's learn this new conversation. And there's a lot to learn. That's why I have a free podcast, because honestly, it's like I could teach you and teach you and teach you on the free podcast, but there's still plenty more to learn, and it takes more than just listening to a podcast to fully integrate it into your life. So so the integration part is interesting, and what we know is that a lot ends up coming up for us, like old memories come up, and we have to put the puzzle pieces of our own lives together and figure out what's coming up for us, and be willing to remember, because most of us live in a state of not really wanting to go back there. I mean, I know I did. And I mean, who I was a coper, a number, a distractor. And so I would do whatever I needed to do to avoid remembering whatever was coming up for me and just digging in and dealing in the moment. And to keep myself out of the gap, I use different methods of distraction. I have addictive thinking. I was a closet smoker for years. I would do whatever I needed to do. Love shopping. Oh my gosh, could get lost. Now with online shopping, I keep myself pretty in check, but probably 4 times a year, I'm like, I think I need a few new things. And I just did that the other day at Zara. I had a meeting at the Galleria at 8:30 in the morning, which I walk into the Galleria and I'm like, there and there's no one there. So then when I came out of my meeting, it was time for it to open, and I was like, I actually need some things for work, and I went into D.A.R.E and did a little damage. So I still have it in me, is my point. See, shiny object, squirrel. I still have it in me, is my point. And that's just what I did to feel better in a temporary moment, and to, not be in the gap, and to not scream my head off at my kids. That was one thing I was sure I wasn't going to do, and I really did, because there was a lot of that when I was growing up. And so that was one thing I was going to stick to, was I wasn't going to rage. However, I did plenty of other things to keep myself from raging. And then I learned, how to take a deep breath and say a mantra in my head. And so that helped. Well, now I have learned something that goes even deeper, and it literally sends a message to the part of your brain where all of those old memories are stored, and it sends a message to your amygdala, which is your place where you go into fight or flight, and it says, like, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe. So now I've learned a new method for dissolving that old gunk that none of us want to remember. And it's this amazing hack called tapping. I actually write about EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique. So I have this whole mind mastery technique. So we had this workshop, the D.A.R.E experience, and now we have this group chat that I said to everyone after the little day long mini retreat, we're going to have this group chat, and it's on this app that I use where you can leave audio texts back and forth. And I said, we're going to do this for 5 days, and we're going to process, and we're going to integrate. So it's like this amazing conversations happening, and everybody's sharing, because we had this big experience together. And so we're all processing, and funny things are coming up. So last night and today I was responding to two people, and what came up was the mom manual. And I'm like, I don't know if I've ever called it that before. So I have a wild hair, and I'm making you guys a podcast about it, because I haven't done that lately, making podcasts for you on the spot. And I know last week twice there were great ideas that came into my head, and if you don't use it, you lose it. And so I didn't take the opportunity to make you guys a podcast, because I'm like, oh, I got to go into the studio, and I need to write it out into an outline form. And I had made it into a bigger deal. And then I lost it. I lost those ideas. I was sitting here thinking, I was like, I don't even know what those ideas are. So I am kicking it kind of old school right now, and just making you guys a podcast about the mom manual, because I don't want to lose this important idea, and I want to tell you guys about it. So I think many of us have this unspoken, unwritten manual in our heads of what a good mom looks like, how she shows up in the world, and who she is. And I want to speak to two things that came up that made me bring up the mom manual. One being, mom in our group at our workshop was talking about how it really feels like a straitjacket for her to go to every one of her kids' baseball games. She has 3 boys. There's lots of baseball games, and it's so much. And I looked at her and I said, and why do you need to go to every baseball game? And it brought up a good conversation. And so there's this unspoken, unwritten rule. A good parent goes to every one of their kids' games. And I'm like, really? Really? I mean, I consider myself a great parent. I don't go to every one of my kids' games. And we just started talking about why. Why do you need to go to every one of their games? So all I hear, the majority of the issues that come up in kids' sports is parents being overly involved and adding to the pressure that the kid already feels on the field. So between the relationship with coaches, the pressure the kid puts on themselves. And now you got the parent in the stand, so invested that they're at every game, hanging on every play. It's too much. It's too much. There has to be a balance. And so I said, look, if you don't want to be at every game, then stop going to every game. So last night was her check in with the group that her oldest and her husband were at his game. It was a 7 o'clock game. She didn't hire a babysitter. She was home with her other two. They were in bed and she just couldn't decide whether she was going to take a bath or read or watch crap TV, or there were so many options. Would she lay in her bed? Would she lay on the couch? Like, she had the whole evening to herself. And she identifies with being a highly sensitive person herself. And so she's hilarious. And so she was like, I just don't know what I'm going to do. So many options. And we were laughing about it. And I said, there's this good mom manual. And who's writing it? Who says we have to follow it? Who is putting it out there? And so then a conversation ensued about, what about when he comes home? And one of the other moms was like, but what about when he gives her a guilt trip about not being there? And I said, it's not a guilt trip unless she makes it a guilt trip, right? The only thing that makes it a guilt trip is if she feels guilty that she's not following this unspoken good mom manual. If he asks her, Mom, why weren't you at my game? That could sound like a guilt trip, or you could master your mind and know that it's something different. He's used to mom being at every game. So he's curious. He's like, hey, why weren't you at my game? And she could easily say, oh, I was home with your brothers here. And he's like, I know, but why didn't you come? Because I was here. Tell me about it. Was it fun? And then she gets curious and interested in him. And she releases that manual and just invests in her kid and says, I care about you. I see you. I want to hear. Bam. There it is. It's that unspoken good mom manual that feels like we're chained to shackles. Drop it. A good mom shows up authentically. A good mom doesn't act like a martyr. Because anytime you act like a martyr and you operate from some unspoken manual, I promise you'll find yourself in the gap more often than not. And then you become scary mommy. And then your kids have trauma in their amygdala that they're going to have to overcome later. That's how it works. So I want you guys to drop this good mom manual. I want you guys to start listening to your body. I want you guys to stop doing things that feel like a freaking straitjacket, because I promise you everyone suffers when you live by that manual. And the other thing I want you to do is, we were also talking about how the good mom manual a lot of times will say, a good mom sounds like this around her children. And I want y'all to drop that fake, phony voice. The kids know it. Everyone knows it. My kids will say, this friend sounds like she's so cool when she's with you, Mom. But like when I'm with her and her kids, she's different. She's not the same. Like, you're smart, you're funny, you're interesting. Stop acting the way you think a good mom acts around your kids or around other people's kids. Just be you, just be authentic, be funny, be quiet, be clever, be interesting, intellectual. They want to know the real you. They want you to drop the good mom manual and just be the real deal. So that's what I got for you guys today. No more good mom manual. You just do you and have the courage to show up as you with your kids out in the world. And that's how you start tapping in to the really, really good stuff. Have a great week. Bye now. Hey, podcast listeners. If you happen to have a strong willed kid who is kind of pushing every one of your buttons lately, I have a resource for you. I made you guys a free guide where you're going to get some tools and tips and strategies to quickly get on the road to creating a happier household. I know you're pulling your hair out. I wanted to make you something so you could start getting some quick wins and building some momentum. So if you want to grab your copy, just go to mastermindparenting.com/free guide, and I hope you enjoy it.